As we say in our building, it's often dealing with enemies is like building the airplane as you're trying to fly it. So these people are challenged with a huge undertaking in front of them. I'm honored to introduce the moderator for this panel, Mr. Bob Landreth. Mr. Landreth is the J9 Technical Director at JF Headquarters DODIN. He is challenged with the task of engaging with mission partners to drive operational requirements and deliver those capabilities to secure, operate, and defend DoD's critical infrastructure. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Landreth and his guests. Thank you.
That's it? There we go. So I pulled the fire alarm hoping that we could get out of this, but it didn't work, so we're up here. So let me start off by, we brought together this super awesome team of folks from across DoD, and so just want to start off with some quick introductions by each of the team members before I start into this. So if we could, just a quick intro.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Brigadier General Dave Snoddy. I'm currently the Deputy Director for Current Operations at U.S. Cybercom. And in that role, while it says Current Operations in the name and the JOC processes do fall under my purview, really primarily I focus on the defensive cyber operations and the DODIN secure, operate, and defend, and represent, frankly, Cybercom in many of the departmental discussions on cybersecurity for the DODIN. And clearly a lot of the automation processes that we seek to improve across the department are often part of those discussions.
Hi, I'm Sandy Radeski. I'm the CIO at Fleet Cyber Command and 10th Fleet. And it's a unique position being in the CIO at a 3-star headquarters of the Navy for Navy's Cyber Command because we are at this juncture of leading cybersecurity and capability development for our operational teams. And so it's really a nexus between policy and authorities, acquisition, technology, and operations. And we are leading the way in many different ways that we'll talk about today in some of the questions. So appreciate the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Corey Nguyen. I'm the Tech Director for Morpheus Cyber. My portfolio is on the offensive side, the OCO side, and then on the DCO side, the BDP Chaos, our BDP solution, and also our Hunt Forward kit, our DMSS kits. So having both sides of the portfolio is kind of interesting, right? From with respect to like a Log4j, right? So how do we defend against Log4j? And then I get to ask, so what are we doing to leverage this this great opportunity that's available for us too? So it's been really great being part of both sides of the cyber piece.
Colonel Ben Ring. I am the Capability Management Officer for the Joint Cyber Warfighting Architecture underneath U.S. Cybercom. In that capacity, I oversee the synchronization and coordination of the requirements and concepts that go into the JICWA. That includes both bringing the integration together today to support today's requirements, today's operational needs, while also providing strategic direction and the vision of where the JICWA is going down in the future. So we can, as Bob mentioned earlier, continuously building the plane in flight. I've got a unique up and out role vis-a-vis with the JICWA in synchronizing and coordinating a lot of the messaging and the efforts as we look up and out from Cyber Command as well. So.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Leo Gentile. I'm the Unified Platform Product Section Chief. My job is to take care of the platform that provides processing, storage, and transport for the entirety of the Joint Cyber Warfighter Architecture, all the way from the edge, all the way to strategic level. In essence, I'm an enabling force and trying to take the requirements and needs of our operators and turn them into reality.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, so because Joint Force Headquarters is here, they said, hey, you got to say some stuff about Joint Force Headquarters to help the folks understand what we're about and what we do. Now, of course, they scripted it so that I don't mess things up, but I'll walk through it real quick. So November 14th, 2014, the Secretary of Defense ordered the establishment of Joint Force Headquarters, Department of Defense's Information Network, JFQ DODIN, to implement a cyber operations command and control framework. Joint Force Headquarters is charged with establishing the unity and command over all DoD components to achieve unified action for the secure, operate, and defend DODIN mission area through command-centric operational framework. To combat a lot of the adversaries, DODIN and our area of operations help to integrate, synchronize, and direct a lot of the actions across the DODIN that the commanders and directors are responsible for controlling to support their missions. They do this in a couple of ways. We identify and mitigate the vulnerabilities, but we also continually evaluate the environment to understand how the adversary behaviors are affecting us and really help to guide us in our defense of that environment. The commanders and directors, other decision makers that are out there, reduce risks to their critical missions through threat-informed information about the cyber environment through daily security and defense-related directives from Joint Force Headquarters DODIN. Joint Force Headquarters, along with the commanders and directors, continually seek to enhance and automate the data gathering and analysis capabilities to sort and analyze the mass amount of data that we get out of all the cyber sensors across DoD. U.S. Cyber Command has established the Joint Cyber Warfighting Architecture, or JICWA, to develop a lot of the automation for the data gathering, the analysis, and the capability. And it's been in place for several years now, but it was really put in place to meet a lot of those needs from not just Joint Force Headquarters, but a lot of the combat commands and services that are out there. So with that said, I want to hand off kind of an overview of what is JICWA over to Colonel Ben Ring, who will get into the details of what is this JICWA thing.
So when you think of the JICWA, first I want to picture, the JICWA is designed to mirror an OODA loop. So if you set your mind, put your mind in that reference, that it's essentially a means to integrate and implement an OODA loop. The JICWA itself, the Joint Cyber Warfighting Architecture, is an integrated suite of capabilities that brings together offense and defensive data. It allows operators and analysts to collect, curate, analyze, and visualize data so they can establish situation awareness, enabling commanders to gauge risk, make timely decisions, and then enabling the force to act at coordinated action at speed and scale to defeat adversaries. And that's either on the offensive side or on the defensive side as well. So it brings that together. As we develop the JICWA, as we organize the JICWA, we align the capabilities into 6 different bins. And it's a means for us to organize these capabilities to align requirements, resourcing, and acquisition. And those 6 bins, they kind of mirror the workflow that you see there on the left. So at the onset, on the left-hand side are the sensors, our means to collect data. That includes all the deployable kits. The teams, the cyber protection teams, will go out and collect data, but it's also the other means across the DODIN and off DODIN to bring in and collect data. The next is our data storage and analytic core component with unified platform, which is that means to curate, collect, collate, aggregate data, and then providing our storage as well. But remember, it's not centralized storage. You want a distributed and a logical means, so it's not bringing all the data in. You have to be able to either you have to logically be able to aggregate your data. So you want the means to reach data, whether it's at the edge or push analytics out and then only bring the data back that you need. So that's what unified platform provides for us. The next bin, if you will, a component, is your joint cyber warfighting architecture. Think of that as your single pane of glass. The means to bring together all of this data, present it to the commanders, to the analysts, to the operators. So again, they can gauge risk and make decisions in cyberspace. Once a decision is made, on the offensive side, then we want to project force in and through cyberspace. That's where your joint common access platform, think of that as your means to project force, your force projection in through from blue space to gray space at or near an adversary target. And then we have our tools as well, which allows us to, it provides the means with which we can execute effects at our place in choosing when the nation so calls on us to do so. And finally, you have a persistent cyber training environment. Think of that as the third dimension. So on this graph, you see that third dimension is your persistent cyber training environment. It's how can we replicate the realistic environments of cyberspace, both blue space and red space, so we can create that threat representative network, so we can train our operators as realistic as possible, but also provide the means with which we conduct mission rehearsal in order to support and prepare for operations. So taken together as a whole, it is that OODA loop, or if you evolve that, the SUDA loop, a sense, understand, decide, act, and assess loop that you see at the bottom of the graphic to your left. All right, and then, by the way, this does also mirror the exact same workflow and process that JADC2 is also working. So for those familiar with joint all-domain command and control, the concept of sense, make sense, and act is the same basic concept, the same basic process where you need to bring in data, aggregate it logically, because you can't all bring it in physically, make sense out of it, establish situational understanding, and then you want to make decisions and then act at speed and scale. It mirrors that exact same workflow. And in a nutshell, that is the JICWA as it comes together with all of the capabilities and the nice graphic you see on your left and to my right.
Want me to change slides or anything?
Do we need to change slides? I mean,
We got that picture too.
so moving on. All right, so how does this all come together? So I'll just continue on in the next slide. So bringing this all together, how does this all work, and how does this all come together in cyberspace? What you see on the right, or excuse me, on my right and your left, is a logical sequence of how do you take basic military 101 doctrine, plan, prepare, assess, model, and map that into some basic computer science and basic technical concepts in order to drive decisions and actions in this domain. This is that OODA loop that I was getting at. And at the top, for those who are, at least, in the Army Army uniform, we grew up learning about MDMP, mission decision-making process, 101. And how do you apply, what we call intelligence prep of the battlefield? Understand your adversary, understand yourself, understand the terrain, and you bring it all together. So what you see at the top is, in order to defend your network, and I'll use the use case of defending a network, is you have to start with an assessment of the terrain. Start with your network. Understand what is your network, and it's not just the physical network. You have to understand the cyber persona, the security groups, the people who use it, all the logical components that goes into the cyber domain. And think of a massive stack of logical overlays on your graphical map. And you bring that together, which gives you a terrain assessment. But then you also have to do your threat assessment. You bring in cyber data, cyber threat awareness data. It could be commercially purchased because there's a lot of good commercial data out there, but enriched with classified intelligence from the intel community that gives us a sense and an understanding of what the threat is to your network. And this happens at all echelons, whether you have a large-scale network defending an entire theater, or you're just on a single base, or you're in a single building defending your network. You have to understand the threats to your network. When you bring that together, the threats and your terrain, then you provide a situational template, to provide what is the threat, how does the threat want to attack my network or your network in a given time based on the threat's objectives. And when you look at the different courses of action and different types of threats, then you start understanding where can I confirm or deny the presence of an adversary? What are those named areas of interest within the network, the NAIs that you build, and that builds that situational template. That situational template then becomes a driving force to understand where do I start placing sensors, where do I start collecting data in my network. From there, you apply a data science model. You have a inductive and a deductive reasoning steps to start looking at the data that you collect, start asking questions, and then each of those information requirements tied to each of those NAIs then gives you a starting place to start applying data science and data analytics. And you have in the left-hand side, you have a means to start, where do I need to start collecting data? Do I need to change my logging levels? Do I need to change the types of applications I'm bringing in? Or do I need to go and place an actual network tap? So remember, it's both physical and logical. That's data engineering. On the right-hand side, it's the data science. What analytics do I need to run? Is it a simple query that I just run periodically, that I can scan Active Directory every single day or every hour? Or do I actually have to go build an algorithm and build an automated workflow so I can automate some of the analytic collection? Or, you take it to the next step, do I have to write an actual an actual algorithm? Do I have to build a model? Do I have enough data and I can go build and train a machine learning model? Maybe you have to go build a neural network that you can then deploy into your network. Taken together, that data science and data engineering effort walks through a prepare, process, analyze, visualize step, or prepare, curate, analyze, visualize step, so you can build out that workflow. The key is you can automate that workflow throughout your network. You can automate it in the cloud, you can automate the edge, and then you have to build out the topology, the network engineering to know where the data comes in, and then how do you actually execute it. What's critical is that you can't collect every data, you can't run everything because you're limited in your compute and storing resources. Right? We have physical limitations of science, physical limitations of physics. All right? The speed of light does limit us in moving data around the globe. Right? So you have physical limitations, and you can only buy so much hardware. So what you need is a prioritization means to understand what analytics and what data do I need to collect. That's all derived from the Commander's Critical Information Requirements, the CCIR, that you see at the bottom. So let the Commander's key decisions, let the Commander's key objectives drive the data and the analytics that you need to provide. So this is a mission planning step to essentially understand what data do I need to collect, what analytics do I need to provide, where do I need to put my compute and storing resources, do I need more compute storing resources on a peninsula or on an island because I project that data is going to get cut off and I got a very limited bandwidth. Those are all part of your terrain analysis. Understanding where you're going to be in what we call a D-deal environment if you're disconnected, or if you just have limited bandwidth to a ship, out in the middle of the Pacific. So you have to understand those physical limitations and then know, do I have to pull data back? Maybe I need to put some analytics. Maybe I need to train that model, put it on the ship, because I'm going to have to rely on that model for the next 3 to 6 months until I can regain connectivity. And that's all the CCR. So that all drives your prioritization. So now you understand how to rationalize your compute and store resources in order to drive decisions, and then those decisions come up, and then you have those coordinated, and then you can make decisions more effectively and more efficiently, which then drives the coordinated action, which then gives you your assessment on, okay, what data do I need to collect next? Where did I miss the data in my collection? Where do I need to push analytics? So that's the whole mission planning concept, and that's how this all comes together in order to drive analytics and to make decisions. So at the end of the day, and I'll come back to where I started, it's all a OODA loop. Right? Some of it you can automate. So there's certain things you can automate, even make automated decisions at a low scale level that then feed a human in a loop, OODA loop. And the key is where can I maximize my automation? Where can I maximize my machine learning, my algorithms, my analytics, so then I can empower the human in the loop to make more important decisions and focus on the more important data. So we're not replacing humans. We're never going to replace a human. We just want to empower the humans. And that's really where it comes back to. That OODA loop, and how do I automate as much as I can and drive as much as I can. And of course, we didn't get to the coordinated action piece, but there's a piece that's on the right-hand side of that graphic that gets into the coordinated action as well, right? So that's all SOAR. On the defensive side, you heard of SOAR, but that's all. It's all related. So I think I was rambling a bit, Bob, but I tried to cover it.
Okay. It was a lot of
I hope
stuff.
everyone. That's in a nutshell. When you. I'm a little passionate about this, but it's this is really how we can. I think the future of where we need to get to at a coordinated fashion at scale.
So I was going to say, so I copied the slide from I have a presentation on Monday. I might need you to come with me.
No problem. No problem. Gotcha.
He even got the Navy talking point for the D-deal environment.
See that D-deal and the ships, and I'm an Army guy talking, ships at sea.
Well, one of the things you mentioned was situational understanding.
Yep.
And so one of the things that's important for the developers and the folks out there is to understand that the view that different areas want to see, right? So Joint Force Headquarters sits at sort of the top, and we want to see sort of that summary view of the entire DODIN. So, I'll start the questioning off to you, Mr. Nguyen, as far as where do you see differences in those situational requirements between places like Cyber Command and the services?
Sure. So I kind of think about a little bit differently. Right? So for the Marine Corps, we only have one CSSP, a cybersecurity service provider. So, of course, the service provider wants to see everything across the whole Marine Corps network, right? Marine Corps Enterprise Network, the MXN. So we not only have the DODIN portion, which is the MXN, and then we also have our DMXN, our deployable aspect of the network too. So, of course, they want to see everything, but the amount of data that's available and the bandwidth that I have, they can't see everything, right? So that's where we are today, is trying to work out, in fact, starting next week for a week and a half, the Marine Corps, we're working on an OPT on a sensor strategy. Basically, what sensors should be where, and then what functions should be done at each of the echelons, right? So for my DMXN, if I don't have the bandwidth, how do I defend the DMXN that I have, and who's the element that's going to be there to defend it? And then what aspect of the data from the DMXN node needs to send up to a regional node, and then up to an enterprise node, which is where our McCog or CSSP will visualize. So so in my mind, I think everybody wants to see everything, but we're constrained by the bandwidth and the amount of data that's being produced.
Jump in.
I want to say one thing that is very common, just because I've been at JFHQ DODIN and now I'm at a service cyber component, is we all want to get to that denominator. And we like log4j. How many assets are impacted, and where are they, and what missions are they affecting, and how do we prioritize to get after those mitigations as soon as we can based on the impact that is associated with each of those vulnerabilities. And so it's really tough between seeing both sides of the JFHQ DODIN, wanting to understand the whole picture, and then also from a service cyber component standpoint, we also have echelons that go down, and tactical networks, and afloat networks, and it is not just this flat enterprise network where we can just get that denominator very quickly, and that's really the continuous challenge as we're moving through and trying to balance our legacy network architecture of the DODIN and moving that to the cloud, trying to get to that synchronized threat picture of really what's impacted and what missions those are affecting. Because, it could be a research and development network that, is a test bed, or it could actually be a mission that's happening. And, the data for supporting that mission is really critical. And so we need to be able to prioritize, because as Colonel Ring said, we can't do it all. We have limitations. So that's my perspective, and what we're trying to do in the Navy is really just get that denominator. And we're working on how do we simplify and integrate and build common schemas with data to get after that understanding.
Yep. All right. Well, moving on to the next question. Really, it talks about the integration of threat intel into the cyber world. And so I'll let you lead this one off, Leo. But it's, the question is, what steps are being taken today to provide a more threat-based risk analysis to things like DODIN operations, where we're responsible for the secure, operate, and defend of the DODIN?
So I will 100% admit that I come from an Intel background, so I'm biased. That said, we are currently and actively working through the process of taking the best schema that 1983 gave us and turning it into usable data points. For those unaware, classified data still uses that same schema that was one step above teletype. So being able to use things like natural language processing and actually get at the text blocks within to pull out the capability-based data is critical for us to be able to automate that defensive picture. That said, that only gets to half of the picture. If you look at intelligence, intelligence is built out of capability and intent. Computers don't do a great job at understanding human intent. They just don't. You need people to do that. So we've been enabling JCC2, which is our sister program that builds the applications for situational awareness and battle space management, to enable intelligence analysts to apply that intent so that they can better understand what our activities are and what they look like. Taking that a step above, and I think we've highlighted it across the panel so far, the biggest thing and the best thing we can do for decision makers through to operators is to provide a comprehensive risk analysis for decisions to be made. So as we work to improve that threat, accurately marrying it with our understanding of vulnerability as well as our understanding of mitigation and our understanding of infrastructure enables us to make comprehensive decisions regarding what we're going to patch, what we're going to defend, or potentially what enemy we're going to go after or what tool of theirs we have to break. By marrying those data sets in a comprehensive form, both in long-term analysis as well as a short-term window, enables for both operators and decision makers to go forward and move with confidence in this domain.
Anybody else want to jump?
Yeah, I'll take a slightly different take on it. So one of the advantages, I think anybody who knows where we sit, both headquarters U.S. Cybercom and headquarters, Joint Force Headquarters DODIN, is we sit on Fort Meade. So in the case of Cybercom, we share spaces with the National Security Agency. So from a threat intelligence feeding the Secure, Operate, and Defend mission, there is a very tight nexus there with the NSA's Cybersecurity Directorate, which I'm sure throughout this conference, a number of leaders from that organization will speak as well. And they're relatively young in that configuration as the Cybersecurity Directorate. There used to be the Information Assurance Division. Largely the same mission, but some of the rearrangements they did internal to NSA brought a lot more direct ability to do cybersecurity threat intelligence and pass that to the DODIN side of the house to be able to actually act on that for the department. So I think every single question we ask here and single thing we talk about has all these same elements in it, frankly, that, at the Cybercom level, we have a view. At the DODIN level, they have a far more detailed view. At the individual service, COCOM, et cetera, they need an even more and different view. Within the construct of DODIN, Bob mentioned it earlier, the command-centric operations framework that's been developed over the last couple years, and frankly now with General Skinner at the helm and Admiral Chase and the rest of the team there at DODIN, they've really been pushing this forward. And it's a very important concept to understand because it's the no-kidding organizational and process side of what we need the technology to support, which is we've divided the Department of Defense Intelligence, or Information Network rather, up into 45 areas of operation, much like you would be familiar with in any other domain. Those align by service, by COCOM, and by defense agency primarily. That's where, if you do the math, that's where we get 45 from. There have been some one-offs that have come and go. When we were running CVR early in the pandemic, that became its own area of operation because it wasn't really on the DODIN, it was its own thing. So we stood that construct up to make sure that environment had that security operations and defense oversight. But each of those, the DODIN is huge. JFHQ DODIN we often get said, well, Cybercom, you have the mission to secure, operate, and defend the DODIN. No, we don't. We have the mission to direct the security operations and defense of the DODIN. We do that through JFHQ DODIN. It's a team sport. Everybody else has to play. So our service components that are represented here, the acquisition community, everybody has to be part of that team and industry. Because frankly, we're getting to a point which really Ben highlighted really well, that we've talked about cops for my entire military career. We have them in other warfighting domains. You can argue how good they are. We've talked about having them in cyber forever. We have some capability now through the JCC2 architecture to give us some of those elements. But there will never be like one picture that will satisfy everybody. But now with the capability to do big data platforms and the data analytics, the ability to distribute that, the ability to access that kind of distributed data globally allows us finally to do, I think, realistically start implementing the things we've always thought we wanted, where all the data would essentially be available, but each element of that command-centric operational framework will be able to truly get the tailored picture of that underlying data that they need to fulfill their part of the C2 structure, which flows from Cybercom right down to the technician at the base post camp and station who's actually doing the day-to-day hands-on, because none of us are actually doing the day-to-day hands-on to secure, operate, and defend the DODIN.
Well, I do want to say something about just think about where we're here, what we're experiencing today with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and the importance of industry partners and OSINT and everything that's happening in the world with our social media platforms. Really say that, again, I think just being constantly tied to operations for the last 15 years, you've got to know what's going on. You've got to be able to prioritize. And having that prioritization and that industry partnership and ability to be able to pivot when something else is happening and you get that notification and you see it's happening in multiple places, it's an indicator. And so I think that's something that's really important in our strategy of how we're building JICWA, JCC2, BDP, is this threat intel integration that we are, which is many different partners that we're pulling together to synthesize the data and make sense of it. But that's just one area I just want to highlight because it's something we really rely on.
And as a follow-on question that will relate to that, right? At least in my years of experience, I've seen two camps out there. There's the intel world and the cyber world. And bringing them together really closely has always been kind of a challenge. And we've made strides at it. But, one of the key questions, and maybe I'll start with you, General Snoddy, is how do you see us having to restructure our workforce skill sets today to better integrate that intel and cyber world?
Yes. So there's a couple levels of this. So one of the most obvious for us at the Cybercom level is, if you're not familiar, and most aren't, frankly, I wasn't personally until I showed up at Cybercom a year and a half ago, that about 2 years ago, or maybe 3 now, the Secretary of Defense at the time signed out a memo actually defining what the Department of Defense's Cyber Operation Force is. And it's a tiered structure now. The top several tiers of that actually are under the direct operational control of U.S. Cybercom. A good chunk of it is not, other than through our directive authority for cyber operations that's been delegated to Joint Force Headquarters DODIN. So a huge amount of the workforce doesn't directly work for Cybercom. There are the Cyber Mission Force, which you're probably familiar with their combat mission teams or cyber protection teams, etc. Within that family, we've done over the last couple of years some very deliberate efforts to reshape the composition of each team type, partly because we recognize through 10 years of experience that the teams probably weren't balanced quite right. We needed more analysis and less operations because you frankly can't do operations unless you've actually done that core analysis of the environment. So we've done some of that to bring better analysis into some of the team types. But when you get to the broader workforce, I think we as and we, of course, Cybercom doesn't own that responsibility. That's actually really DOD-CIO has sort of the cyber workforce kind of mandate to manage that. We work very closely with them, and certainly for those portions of the workforce that do OpCon to Cybercom, we work very closely with them to try to shape some of the career policies, retention, other things to keep the workforce healthy. But I think writ large, we've recognized over time, we do not have a tight enough integration with core intel capabilities, largely derived through SIGINT, that inform our world, and the individuals out there at Base Post Camp Station. Because I was a Comm Squadron commander as a young 04 in the Air Force. I had a grand total of like 4 SIPRNet terminals on my base and 0 JWIX terminals. I did not have a SIPRNet account. So when an order came down that said, do this because we told you, the inclination of all the workers is to go, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? And do it, trust me, I told you so. We still have that kind of problem. DODIN puts orders every single day, some of which are in that sort of do it because I told you and trust me, there's a reason. We will always have some elements of that because there will always be some things that we're doing that are driven by sensitive intelligence that we just have to react to. You just need to do it because we told you to do it. But we do need to, as an entire department, and frankly, even commercial industry, I think, has gone more this way, where they're doing their own commercial sort of intelligence functions. We have to figure out a way, frankly, to drive some of that information closer to the edge so people actually understand. There's a big movement right now in the department to sort of change the culture of we don't like to use the word compliance because it's not just about compliance, but the culture of this is not just about the mission being able to succeed. If you lose, in today's world, if you lose the cyber fabric that supports your mission, you don't have a mission anymore. There is almost nothing any element of this department can do without connectivity. So there's an increased emphasis now that we have to balance the cybersecurity of the enterprise with the need to get whatever the conventional mission is. Part of that will require us structurally to continue to grow that relationship between the core intelligence community and the cybersecurity community and the relevance to this panel. Frankly, for the time being, most of that occurs through JFHQ DODIN and their ability to proliferate direction across the department.
So I'm going to pull on my Intel background real quick. So the problem with the separation of ops and Intel, at least in the cyber arena, to be blunt, goes all the way to the top. Intel resources within the Department of Defense are controlled by Intel and Security. Operational resources are controlled by, in our case, primarily DoD CIO and or the J6. Because of that separation, it kind of comes all the way down to the point where we don't have a force provider for cyber, so each separate force is trying to do their best to get at what they consider cyber ISR at their base, but it's an inconsistent match across the whole. Sitting at Unified Platform, I see this in how sensor strategies are implemented across, or how data is triaged at the lowest level. But it's an inconsistency that has led to us having poor understanding from the tactical force through the operational level and up to strategic. I'm not going to say I have a silver bullet to solve it, because I don't, but I do recognize the problem. There are some potential avenues forward, like the Air Force is currently instituting the potential of more MDTs, which are localized defensive centers with Intel bodies embedded in them. That's a way forward. The Army is implementing at each of their sections a installation-wide Intel match with their ops. There are different ways forward, but it's going to be service by service, and we're going to have to do our best at the operational and strategic level to try to bring that together and make it holistic. But the other thing to highlight there, because they are not DoD CIO, and you mentioned COF Group 3, sir, having come from JFHQ DODIN myself, fun fact that everything that is basically not a service or an agency does not have a native Intel component. So they are dependent upon JFHQ DODIN for defensive intelligence, which with a small J2 staff, they do the best they can, but it is what it is.
So let me get after another area that General Snoddy talked about. Was we're constantly talking about being mission focused. But the way we defend the networks today is still broad-based. We still go after everything, right, equally. So really the question of the team is, how do you see us now getting more mission-focused in our capabilities and our assessments of the environment? Anybody?
I can take that. If you want.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I want to use this example because, if you've been around the DoD for a while, you've seen how we've evolved our networks and our inspection process and our CSSP process by circuit or by network with your ATO and accreditation. We're now all trying to get to this cyber readiness construct and mission mapping and things that all these buzzwords that you'll hear. Our systems and our processes, cybersecurity, and General Snoddy talked about this, and defensive cyber ops, those two cultures and worlds are coming together finally. And so what we're trying to do, at least in the Navy, is we're trying to bring together those contextual systems, those ones that, you put your ATO package together with your artifacts, but we want to use more continuous monitoring type data in the process versus the old way of doing accreditations. We want to put that kind of contextual data, because we need to understand what the boundaries are. Where are those systems at, and what missions do they support? And are they on multiple networks? Are they on single enclaves? And how do we understand those boundaries? And then for us, key from our operational headquarters is who's accountable? Do they really understand the mission impact? And do we have cyber CSSP services or cyber protections teams monitoring those capabilities and understanding those mission impacts? And that is what we're trying to synthesize from a data analytics perspective, and this beautiful COP that we all try to get to that we haven't been able to get to yet fully. But that's what the Navy's focused on as priority number one is, getting our program office systems, which are typically the ones that need a little bit extra love, and then those mission systems and our networks, understanding those boundaries in a way that we can have in a data schema, and then pairing that with our continuous monitoring and our CSSPs. And for the Navy, we've done something really special. We have our CSSP team and our cyber protection team all in one command. And we are using that as a force multiplier with our N2 down in Suffolk, and then we have another N2 at the headquarters level that's synchronizing here with Cyber Command and the other service cyber components. But that is what we're trying to get to. So that's why Fleet Cyber's role in what we're doing with the Navy enterprise side of things and the cybersecurity side of things is so important, because they really still are two pretty separate, communities, and they're coming together, but they're not fully there yet. And so that's what we're trying to do.
So I did want to chime in, and Sandy said it twice now, and I should have taken the hint. For those unaware, one of the things I'm most proud of at Unified Platform is what we call Schema 1. So Schema 1 is our common schema that we developed based upon Elastic Common Schema to get at tagging for, mostly at this stage, DODIN defensive data. So roughly the 39 petabytes we have across all the UP data nodes. We are slowly evolving that out to include other data types. But the reason I bring that up is as we talk about this COP, everybody's like, oh, get to a COP, go to a COP. We literally need to condition 39 petabytes of data, plus readiness data, plus intel, put it through an analytic, and then get to a COP. It's not just a thing we can paint over and get there quickly.
Right.
Bob, bless his heart, is still in charge of a mission thread that we help him out with called the Secure Operating Defend Common Operating Picture, SODCOP, that we have been steadily chomping at for roughly a year and a half now to get at that common operations picture. The second point I wanted to highlight from my position as Section Chief in Unified Platform Product was how we are resolving the differences between our compliance and our defensive capabilities. So I operate inside of a DevSecOps framework using an agile process. Quite frankly, having a static ATO is not feasible for me. I don't function in waterfall. I can't wait for things to get done. So we maintain a continuous ATO. We're one of the few that have one. That means that we don't just build the book that is our ATO and set it on a shelf. We continuously update it as the year goes by. It flexes and changes based upon the guardrails set by our AO. The other thing that we pair that with is the software acquisition pathway, which means we're quickly developing software inside of that construct so that we're not only satisfying the needs of our customer, but maintaining our O's inside the house. So every time I go to build something, I am actively working with my CISO, as well as my IT ops bodies, as well as my software deployment bodies, to assure that we have looked at all aspects. We're taking care of the weapon system, and at least at a tactical level, married our, as an example, ACAS scans with our intelligence and with our understanding of platform, so that we have done our best to protect ourselves going forward and protect the asset that Cyber Command put in our hands. I can't say that's done across the force, but that's at least how we've gotten at breaking that paradigm of having two separate entities in unified platform.
And I'll just add on. I think, when you look at how do you make progress and move forward, that's what Leo was touching on is, building that, DevSecOps platform that you can build around. So you have a common architecture, common core framework that defines, your set of services, your set of data systems, And then you have to have, paired with that is what are your your data tags, your core data schemas, your authoritative data sources. Once you define that core architecture, then that becomes your core platform. And then you instantiate it in your production environment, you instantiate it in your testing environment, you instantiate it in your development environment, and then that allows you to be more efficient as you can build new software, upgrade versions, and add new features, and then allows you to, throughout the continuous ATO process, to be able to go right from development all the way out to your edge and your production capabilities. And that's what industry is working at. That's why industry is successful now. And I think it's incumbent on us in the DoD to be able to understand how that applies in our setting and how we can best make use of all these great DevSecOps, how we can make use of that so we can integrate and evolve more efficiently instead of new ATO and then you got to update your ATO and it's just paperwork trail. So that's really what we're trying to get towards.
Just get away from the technical piece a little bit.
Yeah.
So on the operating force side for the Marine Corps, what we've done is to operationalize it. About 2 years ago, we created the McSen C2, basically a way to operationalize the forces defending the network. So our network battalions were previously underneath the installation commands, you're doing network monitoring and so on. Those are now network battalions led by an 05 select for command, and then they're all underneath an 06, a singular 06 operational command and McCog commander. Right? So now all our forces are have a unity of command for defending the DODIN, for the McSen. And then on the DMXN side, our DCO IDM companies are underneath the MEF. So again, underneath the operational commander, And then on the technical side piece, that's why I got the B2B Chaos and DMSS kits, because as part of JICWA, it's one unity command for technical holistically across the JICWA for Marine Corps wise. So this way, because we talked about Schema 1, but how does Schema 1 work for offensive cyber data, right? We still need to think through that a little bit.
So we have been, Schema 1 is another item in which it's capacity-based, so we work as quickly as possible. The data sets we have been working through are based upon the annual campaign order, Cyber Commands 8500, in addition to which, in some cases, specialty sets that are set up. I'm not saying we're covering all cyber defensive data, but we've at least started with those top 10, and we're working our way down through.
So if I could just tie this one thing that Coy just said with the graphic that's up there. So Coy alluded to, he's got commanders in charge at different echelons and he's divided up his cyber terrain, if you will, into areas of operation, which is how DODIN has done at the top, 45 AOs, areas of operation, which you can hierarchically decompose. That whole concept is tied to this exact concept you see before you. With establishing NAIs and then making decisions and then empowering a commander in charge of his or her AO with the responsibility, the authority, and the resources to make decisions that can affect cyberspace. And then holding that commander accountable for those actions. So if you empower that commander and then align the resourcing accordingly, then you can actually execute this and we can be much more efficient and effective. And then key across that is you're still going to have sectors that cut across multiple AOs, mission-driven sectors. And then someone has to look at how does the data pass from one AO to another so we can drive operations across sector, which is how we support, and enable joint operations. So it's all tied together. It all comes from the same concept of AOs and, the support to analytic operations. It's all derived from the same concepts.
So I want to throw out one more question, kind of a softball to the panel to help industry kind of understand where we're going in the future, the kind of needs that we have. So the question is, where do we see some of the key technology advances that are going to benefit the JICWA and our cyber capabilities in the future?
Softball, huh?
Softball. Key technologies.
Pretty wide open.
Well, and I know we're probably going to run out of time here, and I know we had an opportunity to throw this out there, but it's not necessarily a technology, but the concept of zero trust is very much central to a lot of our departmental conversations about the future evolution of the entire DODIN. Probably initially, we've already done some pilot efforts. We'll do some more, mostly focused on the SIPRNet architecture, because we recognize within the department, frankly, it's our weakest architecture, unfortunately.
It's been cobbled together more so than any of our other networks just because of program-driven requirements over time. And it wasn't really built by any service to be like, well, here's my whole SIPRNet background. It was pieced together because of GCCS and GCSS and other programs over time. So we're going to, as a department, focus a lot of our zero trust energy on the SIPRNet first. It's frankly a smaller fabric than the NIPRNet and few less players. So while that's no specific technology, we're going to need a lot of help from industry, frankly, to make that real. Because zero trust is easy to say, just like cloud is easy to say. Actually implementing zero trust is some about technology, and we have a tendency in the department to lean towards we can buy that solution. Zero trust is not a solution we'll just be able to buy. Zero trust will require, frankly, different mental processes from every single person operating in that environment and maintaining the environment. It will require a lot more due diligence in controlling access to the right information by the right human, since that's sort of at the core of the whole zero trust. Defend the data, don't try to defend the entire architecture. So that, frankly, is going to consume a lot of our energy. And frankly, I think we're all sort of learning as we think about this over time. A lot of the way we've structured our sensor architecture, a lot of the way we've traditionally done sort of our multi-tiered, endpoint, mid-tier, outer boundary kind of architecture in the department, foundationally is not going to be the same in a zero trust world. So the way our CSSPs operate, the way we even have trained our CPTs, the way we train all of our forces is going to have to evolve with this new technology. And we don't have the end picture exactly in mind, and it's not something we'll achieve just as a department. We'll be doing it certainly in lockstep with industry partners who have already gone down this path, and certainly the core technology providers that, well, in some regards, I think a lot of us are convinced we probably own a lot of the pieces that would make zero trust possible today. We just don't know how to do it. And we don't have all those sort of policy processes and other things in place that would actually allow us to start flipping those switches over from let's watch the network to let's watch the data and the accesses to things on that network.
I just want to add, NDAA 2022, right, talks about operational technology, right? So I think we have to be able to defend DODIN holistically by 2025. So we get the tasker, hey, what's your ability to visualize OT technology and so on, and we're nowhere near there, right? So SCADA has very different protocols. How do I translate that over to IP base? Because I'm going to use as much of my DODIN capability for defense as possible. So a good example is Johns Hopkins APL, right, has the Mosaic effort for facilities. What it's doing is basically translating facility protocols onto IP and then pushing that onto an ELK stack, right? And then analytics on the ELK stack to defend that facility. Beautiful solution for us. I can just grab that solution and then put it into my existing BDP chaos or my MCM solution, and it works.
So, sorry, Sandy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Did you think I was going to say something?
I thought you were.
I did want to say something.
So, I guess as the acquisition guy on the panel, the direction going forward is we are going for max flexibility. To be blunt, we want to be able to. We know that technology is moving at a rapid pace. Quite frankly, if I think about this in Air Force terms, we're in the golden age of jet aircraft, right? There's a new cyber thing every time we turn around. But as such, we need to protect ourselves and make sure that from an acquisition standpoint, we can lift as shift as necessary. So flexibility is key. The other thing I would throw out to my industry partners is there are a number of open source standards that we are actively working. I mentioned Schema 1 earlier. We are active players in the Elastic Common Schema community. We publish what we can to them. We accept what they publish back to us. Come play, come participate. We're more than happy to have you. Finally, we are more than willing to partner with industry on both development as well as longer term efforts. More than once, we've partnered with industries for the development of great tools. Currently, we have an item called Distant Rook, which basically takes CPT kit provisioning down from 7 days to roughly 2 to 3 hours. And we got to that through work we did with SEE, and we helped develop it. They get to keep the patent, we get to keep the technology, and we're both very happy about it. So we're more than happy to come work with you. Just come to our door, knock on in, let us know what you want to talk about.
I'll just say one thing. Just work with your clients on their operating model. The technology is there. It's never been about technology. We're always making advances. It's about integration. It's about bringing it together so our operators can use the capability effectively in their environment. We have sailors coming in and out. We have contractors coming in and out. It's always a changing environment. We can't lose our authorities in how we're doing our operating model. And so I think that really means that we've got to have strong partnerships and communicate a lot with our industry partners so that they understand, how our operating environments work and what we really truly need from a requirement standpoint. Not, it's humans. I think you said this. It's humans that are making the decisions, and so we're not going to lose that piece of how we're doing command and control, and so for me, it's not really been about the technology ever. It's always been about operations and how we implement, and a lot of that is dependent on partnerships, integration, communications, and some standards. I'll say standards between different industry partners. It's come a long way in the last decade, but we could always get better with that because we have multiple industry partner technologies in our environments, and so that would definitely help us is coming to common standards.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing. When I look at industry, our biggest limiting factor across all of industry is people. Our ability to recruit, retain, train, educate, and just find the right people is a shortage across the board. And recognize that the intellectual capacity within our nation is found in industry, not in government. Not saying the government does not have it, but the predominance of it comes from industry. So we need support, on the government side in order to be successful. So that's where we can best need help. Just keep in mind that we are building we're trying to integrate across multiple components, multiple missions, multiple operations and organizations. Whether it's the JICWA, whether it's building zero trust, whether it's defending the DODIN. We need capabilities that are integratable into what we're building. So and we're trying to build our standards, whether it's Schema 1, we're trying to build core common standards, and API gateways, so we can make these capabilities integratable as we move forward. But that intellectual capital and that power comes from industry, and that's where we really, really need the support.
So with that said, D, am I out of time? We're getting cut off? All right, I was going to try to open up for questions, but it looks like we ran out of time. I have 4 minutes. 4 minutes for Q&A. All right. Any questions?
Joel.
Integration of capabilities across industry. So my colleagues were really excited about this, and they were asking me, as you guys were talking, who is responsible for that integration? Who basically has that JROC oversight within Cyber Command, and across the services to ensure that all the capabilities that JICWA is putting forth are integrated and work seamlessly together?
So no, I'll just U.S. Cyber Command. I'll just go and quote. Title 10 167B literally dictates that General Nakasone, Commander U.S. Cybercom, has the authority and responsibility for the integration of equipping forces, right? Which gives the command the authority, which is further echoed in DODI 5100.01 as DOD policy. So U.S. Cybercom has that authority and that responsibility to do it. Now, doing it across the services, culturally, resource-wise, it's a different story. But in terms of who has the responsibility, it does fall on U.S. Cyber Command.
Yeah, I think one good, and he's absolutely right, and he's one of those guys who holds that job within the command. But it's important to recognize the distinction between what JICWA is and the DODIN. So the rest of the DODIN, that's Cybercom attends all the meetings, has an opinion, certainly from a cybersecurity and from a C2 defensibility standpoint. But a lot of that, like the Zero Trust Reference Architecture, came out of the DoD CIO's office. They've recently stood up I can never remember what it's called. It's not a program office, it's portfolio management office. It's made up with experts from a few different key parts of the department to sort of orchestrate the broader architectural efforts for the department. So the JICWA part that specifically supports Cybercom and its components, and then eventually the other COCOMs and others to get views into that data, clearly within our bailiwick. The overall DODIN piece, DoD CIO, Joint Staff, others, team support.
John Matthews?
Hi, Earl Matthews from Mandiant, and I'd just like to thank the entire panel for being here today. You don't know how invaluable it is when you're on that side of the fence and then you come on this side of the fence to have you here and hear your thoughts. One of the things I took from you all today was about the importance of threat intelligence, right? As we know, it doesn't matter if you're defending a nation, a building, or a network, you need to have the best threat intelligence. I've heard Admiral Chase mention a number of times he'd like to see commercial threat intelligence down to the lowest tactical level. Most recently, I was at 16th Air Force, and they were showing me that through their commercial intelligence feeds, they actually had 2 days in advance information about Ukraine, Russia happenings before it came down through official channels. CISA provides commercial threat intelligence to all federal agencies, civilian agencies. In the Department of Defense, we do not have that capability. So given what you've all said, who would be the appropriate person to lead that charge to be able to provide commercial threat intelligence down to the tactical end?
So you start off. I'll provide.
Okay. So roughly a year ago, there was an executive order that issued that said that we had to get to that level across the federal government. There is a series of working groups that are ongoing internal to the Department of Defense. What it boils down to is enterprise license management, which we very quickly discovered is a larger beast than we actually had the capability to cover. As such, the working group, last I heard, is still trying to figure out who is going to get the pin stuck to them, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
So if you want to follow up, I would reference this past NDA section 1521, which directs the DoD to solve that problem, but it has a year to provide the direction, and then even so thereafter, there'll be more time to actually stand it up and execute it. So OPR to do the coordination at the DoD level.
Last I checked, it's the working group is being chaired by PCA.
PCA right now is working that. Right. Not to throw PCA under the bus, but I know exactly what. So.
All right. With that said, I think that completes our panel discussion. Appreciate everybody showing up.